most dangerous knife a ranger carries. That's the pitch stamped across the thumbnail, and it's built to move units, not to describe anything proven in the field. That one sentence is 6 separate claims stacked on top of each other: the danger, the steel, the do-it-all versatility, the price, the toughness, and the ranger himself. And not one of them has been tested, only repeated. This is the knife people trust with real cold, real distance from help, frozen wood, and no backup plan. I'm testing every claim one at a time and saving the least provable one for last. I'm Ranger Jack, a backcountry guide and outfitter, 17 years now, putting clients through multi-day alpine and winter trips, equipping every single one of them myself. Claim 1, most dangerous knife. Say that phrase out loud and it sounds like a compliment, doesn't it? Dangerous means it works. Dangerous means it's not messing around. That's exactly why the phrase sells, and it's exactly why it should make you pause instead of click. Here's the problem. In a fixed blade, dangerous almost always just means the edge geometry is aggressive, a thinner grind, a steeper angle on the bevel, something built to bite fast and look intimidating the second it comes out of the sheath on camera. That's not nothing. A thin, aggressive edge genuinely does cut better on day one out of the box, in a demo. It'll slice rope and shave kindling and look incredible doing it. But a thinner edge is also a weaker edge, and that trade-off never makes it into the title. It chips easier on bone. It chips easier on frozen wood. It chips easier on anything with grit or ice buried in it, which describes most of what you're actually cutting on a real trip, not a kitchen counter. So when a listing calls a knife dangerous, what it's actually selling you is initial sharpness, dressed up in language that sounds like a durability claim. Those are not the same thing, and the gap between them is exactly where a knife lets you down. Not on the unboxing table, but 3 days into a trip, in the cold, when there's nothing else in your pack to fall back on. To be fair, edge geometry does matter, and I'm not going to pretend it doesn't. A well-ground edge is a real asset. It's just one spec among several, and it's not proof of overall quality by itself. Verdict: sharp is not the same as reliable, and if a title leads with dangerous, that's a marketing choice built to get a click, not a performance claim built to survive a real trip. Next up is the spec that gets thrown around like it settles the whole argument on its own. Claim 2, the steel. K-Bar builds this one out of 1095 Crovan, full tang. And if you've spent 5 minutes around gear forums, you already know people treat that spec sheet like a mic drop, like naming the steel type ends the conversation. Here's the reality check. 1095 Crovan is genuinely solid carbon steel for the price point. It holds an edge well under real use. It's tough. It resharpens easily in the field without needing specialty equipment, and full tang construction means the blade doesn't stop where the handle starts. It runs the entire length of the knife as one continuous piece of steel, which adds real structural strength exactly where a knife is most likely to fail under stress. That part is true, and I'll give it to them straight, because giving credit where it's earned is the only way any of this is worth listening to. But carbon steel comes with a trade-off. Nobody puts on the box in bold letters. It rusts fast if you don't wipe it down and oil it after every single use. And in my experience, most first-time buyers don't. They buy the knife, they use it once, they toss it back in a pack still damp from a river crossing, and 3 trips later, they're surprised to find pitting on a blade they were told was battle-tested. And full tang means more steel running through the handle, which means more weight, which you don't feel unpacking it at home. You feel it in a cold, tired hand on hour 6 of a real day when every extra ounce matters. A great spec sheet with zero maintenance behind it still fails. It just fails slower and quieter until the day it doesn't, and that day is never convenient. Verdict: the steel really is a strength of this knife. That's the honest, unglamorous truth of it, but a strength only holds up if you actually maintain it. And that's exactly where the marketing gets lazier. Nobody puts "requires regular oiling or it will rust" on the thumbnail. And here's the part that actually costs people money down the line. Replacing a rusted, pitted blade because nobody explained the maintenance up front, is a completely avoidable expense. And it's the kind of expense that quietly makes a budget-friendly knife feel like a bad purchase a year later, when the actual problem was never the steel at all. Claim 3. Everything you need to know the idea that this one knife covers the whole job by itself. This is where a single product quietly gets sold as an entire survival kit, and it's the claim that gets people stranded on exactly the task the knife happens to be worst at exactly the moment they can least afford it. Here's the mechanism underneath it. Batoning through frozen wood wants a thick spine and a straight, durable edge that can absorb repeated impact without rolling. Skinning wants a shorter, more controlled blade with a fine, precise point that won't puncture where you don't want it to. Fine carving and camp tasks want something small, light, and easy to control for long stretches. The Ka-Bar's drop point profile is a generalist by design. It handles all three of those jobs adequately, and none of them exceptionally, because no single blade geometry physically can. That's not a flaw unique to this knife. It's true of every fixed blade generalist on the market, and it's just physics, not a manufacturing defect. I learned this the hard way early in my outfitting career, watching a client's so-called tactical grade fixed blade shatter clean through while batoning frozen wood on day 3 of a multi-day trip. A different knife entirely from this one, a different brand, but the exact same root cause underneath it. Someone trusted one tool to handle a job it was never actually built to handle alone, and found that out at the worst possible moment with no backup and hours from the truck. Verdict: a solid do-it-all knife is a genuinely fine backbone for a kit. That's real, and it's a fair use case. But the second a title calls it everything you need, it sets someone up to be under-equipped on the one specific task that actually matters on that specific day, and by then, it's too late to swap it out. Claim 4. The price comparisons. You've probably seen this exact knife stacked up side by side against blades 3 or 4 times its cost, framed like a budget option, quietly outperforming knives well out of its weight class. Here's the reality check on that one. Price gets used as proof in both directions in this niche, and both directions are a little dishonest. Expensive gear gets treated like it must be superior purely because it costs more, and budget gear gets treated like it must be a secret hidden gem purely because it costs less, and neither of those is automatically true in either case. What actually determines real-world toughness is heat treat and quality control during manufacturing, not the number printed on the price tag. A well-heat-treated steel at a modest, honest price beats a poorly treated premium steel every single time, and the reverse is just as true. A cheap knife with sloppy heat treat will fail faster than a mid-range knife that got it right. To be fair here, and I mean this, the Ka-Bar's actual price to performance is genuinely solid. You're not really paying a premium for a name on the handle. You're mostly paying for the steel and the build quality itself, and that is a fair trade at this price point. But Beats Knives 4 times its price is a framing choice, built on an unnamed, unfair, cherry-picked comparison point specifically chosen to make the gap look bigger and more dramatic than it actually is in practice. Verdict: the underlying value here is real, and it's earned. The marketing framing wrapped around that value is doing extra work it never needed to do in the first place. If you're buying, ask what you're actually paying for at each price tier: heat treat, fit and finish, sheath quality, warranty support, and compare those specific things directly instead of letting a headline number do the comparing for you. Claim 5. Toughness under real field stress, not demo table stress. Every promotional video shows roughly the same scene: someone battening cleanly through dry seasoned wood on a warm, well-lit day, blade holding up perfectly, comment section nodding along underneath it. That's a controlled environment, dry wood, room temperature steel, an ideal practice grip, and someone who's done that exact swing 100 times before hitting record. Real backcountry trips are nothing like that. Cold steel gets measurably more brittle, which means the exact same baton strike that looked flawless in a July demo can chip an edge clean off in January without warning. Wet gloves and wet grip slip, which changes how much force actually transfers cleanly into the blade versus how much gets absorbed sideways into your own hand and wrist. And repeated batoning, trip after trip, season after season, stresses the exact point where the blade meets the tang. In cumulative ways, a single clean demo swing on camera never comes close to revealing. The moment a knife actually fails is never on the demo table under studio lights. It's always somewhere in the actual field, in real cold, at the worst possible time, with no backup knife sitting in your pack and no hardware store within a day's hike. That's not a specific knock on this knife over any competitors. It's true of any blade nobody's actually pushed past a single controlled demonstration. Verdict: a knife that looks tough on camera hasn't proven a single thing yet about how it holds up across a real multi-day trip in real, unforgiving weather. If a review shows you exactly one controlled test and calls it proof, that's a demo, not a verdict. Real toughness only shows itself after a full season of actual use, in actual conditions, which is the only standard I trust before a knife ever goes on a client's list. And the next claim is the one nobody watching that video can actually check at all. Claim 6. A ranger carries it. This is the claim baked right into the title itself, and it's saved for last on purpose because it's the biggest one and, honestly, the least provable of all 6. Here's the reality check laid out plainly. There's no named agency attached to that line, no specific unit, no actual person you could call up and ask to confirm or deny it either way. It's an unsourced sentence that sounds like hard proof because it borrows the imagery and weight of professional credibility without ever actually supplying the substance underneath that imagery. That's the exact pattern, and it shows up constantly in this niche. Vague, borrowed authority standing in for real verification, repeated confidently enough, often enough, that people simply stop questioning it after a while. To be fair, and this matters, plenty of real field professionals genuinely do carry K-bars for real, sensible, well-earned reasons. It's a solid, affordable, genuinely well-built knife with decades of actual field use behind the general reputation, and that reputation wasn't invented out of thin air. But a broad general reputation earned honestly over decades is a completely different thing from one specific, unsourced, a ranger carries this exact knife claim, slapped onto a title purely to sell you on a level of trust you were never actually given real evidence for. That's the whole game, right there, laid bare. The single loudest claim in the entire video is the one claim you have absolutely no way to verify at all. And once you notice that pattern here, you'll start noticing it everywhere in this niche, trusted by professionals, field-tested by experts, carried by guides, all phrases built the exact same way, all impossible to check, all doing the exact same job, borrowing credibility nobody actually handed over. So here's what actually matters when you're choosing a knife like this one, once you strip away all 6 of those claims and look only at what's checkable. Look hard at edge retention weighed against how easy that specific steel actually is to resharpen out in the field, because you will be sharpening it yourself alone with nobody around to hand you a diamond stone. Weigh full tank strength honestly against the actual weight you're genuinely willing to carry for the length and type of trip you're actually planning, not the length of trip shown in a glossy marketing photo. Be brutally honest with yourself about whether you'll actually maintain carbon steel, wiping it down, oiling it, storing it dry. Because if the honest answer is no, that alone should change which steel type actually makes sense for you specifically. Match the knife to the specific tasks you'll genuinely use it for out there, not the vague, comforting promise of doing absolutely everything at once. And when you're comparing options side by side, just drop any endorsement or authority language out of the decision entirely. If a claim can't be independently sourced, it shouldn't be weighted in your decision at all. Treat it as noise, not signal. Put those 5 checkable things side by side for any 2 knives you're deciding between, and you'll usually find the real winner in about 2 minutes, without ever needing to know whose name got attached to it. Here's the short version, the same checklist I actually run through myself. Before anything goes on a client's gear list, no exceptions, test any edge geometry claim against real chipping risk in cold and grit, not just how sharp it feels on day one. Verify the steel and build specs yourself, instead of taking a spec sheet as the whole story on its own. Match the knife to your real, specific tasks, not the marketing's vague scope. Weigh price against actual heat treat quality and consistent manufacturing, not the number printed on the tag. And throw out any authority or endorsement claim you personally can't independently source. I don't take a dime from K-Bar or from any other knife maker. No sponsorships, no affiliate links, nothing. Which is exactly why I can tell you straight that this one's a solid, honest knife for the money, without needing you to believe a single unsourced claim to get there. A reputation and a label printed on a box never replace a full season of a knife actually earning its place in someone's pack. I keep a running mental log of every single piece of gear that's ever let a client down out there in the field, going all the way back to that first frozen wood failure that changed how I test everything now. And this knife, so far, through real use in real cold, hasn't earned a spot on that list. That's not a small thing coming from me. So here's what I actually want from you. Tell me the claim you fell for, the knife, the tent, the boots, whatever the gear was, that sounded absolutely bulletproof in a title and just didn't hold up once you were genuinely out there, depending on it, miles from anywhere. Or tell me the opposite, something you tested and verified yourself, the hard way, that turned out to actually be true, no marketing required. I'd genuinely rather hear both kinds of stories than neither. That's the only real way the rest of us stop buying the claim on the label and start buying the knife itself, on its actual merits, checked and verified before it ever goes on a trip that matters.